We continue the Shir in Sicha Yisrael, Sif Kuf Mem Tes, dealing with the Sipuri Maisias. Many of those stories were in the middle of the 13th last story, Sipuri Maisias, called the Zion Butlers, and the story pertaining to or dealing with this young couple who, after their wedding, during the 7 days, Shivas Yimei HaMishta, after the wedding, had this kisufim, this yearning, this craving for the sight again of the 7 bettlers, 7 beggars who had fed them when they were small children. Because of their kisufim, because of their strong desire for kedusha, for these tzadikim, therefore, the desire is what drew them, brought them to them, and each one of these 7 bettlers, who at first appeared to possess a physical defect, demonstrated the fact that he was perfect physically. It was only an illusion about this defect. In fact, each one possessed supernatural powers. And these supernatural powers, they now gave as a gift to this couple. And these 7 bettlers, of course, are really the tzadik emes, who possesses the qualities of all 7. He demonstrates these qualities one each day. All, of course, obviously leading up to the end of the Golus, leading up to the Geula Shlema for the Jews. Now, to recap slightly, we're in the middle of the 5th day, and the 5th bettler showed up. The 5th bettler was the one with the apparent hunchback. His shoulders were hunched. He explained that actually, his shoulders were not hunched. He has very broad and powerful shoulders. The fact that he carries a lot, he carries more than anyone on his shoulders. His shoulders are the bechina, the category of a miyut machzikas hamruba, a little area that can contain a lot of mass on this small area. Here the story explains about the different levels of kedusha. The higher the kedusha, the smaller the area, the more it can contain. As we said, physically, scientifically, it seems to be proven that every amount of area can contain only that much space within the area. In fact, when we go to kedusha, the spiritual, we find that there is no limit. It is not bound by the laws of space any longer. It could contain more, as for example, in Israel, the Beis HaMikdash, where in a small area, you had all the entire nation of Jews could fit in comfortably, defying all the laws of space. In this story, the Chachamim, the wise men who were speaking to this 5th bettler, each boasted about his powers of miyut machzik samruba, how he was able to surpass, go beyond this law of space, until finally the bettler spoke up and said, I am higher, greater than all of you. My degree of miyut machzik samruba is greater than all of yours, because I'm completely above the entire Indian of Mokum, space. I'm Malam and Mokum completely. He proceeded to prove it by the discussion of a special group of tzaddikim who delved into the issue of, can there be found a tree under which all the animals can assemble under the shade of the branches of that tree, and whose branches and boughs and twigs all the birds of the world too can assemble, settle, and live there peacefully. They discovered there is such a tree. As we said, this is the special tree in Gan Eden, the Eitz HaChayim, which means the tree which stands for the Teda, Teda Kedusha. But to get to it, the problem is first how to find the correct route to get there. And then, when you do find it, you discover the tree, how to get to the tree actually. So the bettler said to these wise men, now that you know about this tree, how do you intend to get there? And a debate arose. Some said to go to the correct directions to go to the east. Some said to the west. Others said different directions. This, of course, is a debate among the Chachamim, tzadikim, just as we have in the Gemara. They could not get together. They could not find a common denominator among them. Until a wise one spoke up and said, why do you discuss the question of how to get to the tree? First find out who is fit to arrive there. Because, as a rule, there is a rule, established set rule, that the only person that can get to that tree is the one that possesses the qualities of that tree itself. The tree itself has 3 roots besides the trunk itself. This is the part we were up to, discussing the qualities of this tree. The 3 roots of the tree. First root is emunah, faith. Second root is yira, that's fear of Hashem. The third root is anivus, that's humbleness. The tree's trunk is emes, truth. And from this tree comes forth branches, other midas, other good qualities. And therefore, it's impossible for anyone to get to this tree unless he possesses these qualities. Now, these 4 items, speaking about a tree, of course, this represents something much higher. We speak about, Zaydik speaks about the Sharashe de Lona, this special tree. We say 3 roots, plus the trunk. Trunk of the tree, which is emes, that obviously refers to Yaakov Avinu. We speak about these 3 plus 1. It is the Gimel Avos and Moshe Rabbeinu. 3 fathers of the Jews, and Moshe Rabbeinu, and simply, as is known, Avraham Avinu was the first of the roots, Emunah. Avraham Avinu, Avraham Ha'ivri, he was on one side of the world against the opposed, the entire world. The entire world was filled with atheism and avodah zarah. He stood steadfastly, a powerful root, the foundation of Emunah, Yesod Emunah. He spread Emunah to the entire world. So that root stands for, that Shadish stands for the first of the Avos Hakdashim, Avraham Avinu. The second Yira is Pachad Yitzchak. Pachad Yitzchak, that's Yira, Chesed and Gevura, that's Emunah and Yira. The second one is Yitzchak Avinu. The third root is Anivus, humbleness, that is Moshe Rabbeinu. The Guf, the body of the tree itself, is emes. Generally, we always speak about the 3 roots as the Gimel Avos. Here we note that the Guf Ha'ilon, body of the trunk of the tree, is emes, and this emes is the midah of Yaakov Avinu. So the trunk, which means that even Moshe Rabbeinu was born from Yaakov Avinu. He too came from Yaakov Avinu. The trunk itself, which gave birth to all the Jews, all Bnei Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu too is part of Bnei Yisrael. Midas that come from Moshe Rabbeinu, that midah itself is unique. No one is classified as the true honor of all time as much as Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore, these are the 4 qualities that a tzadik is supposed to possess before he can get to this special tree, tree of the Eitz Achayim, the tree of life, which means the Torah itself. If one wants to delve into the secrets of the Torah and draw life from it, spiritual life, he must have first these special qualities. He must purify himself to this point. Now, therefore, they had to search among themselves and find one or more who possessed these qualities that could get to the tree. In searching, they found that certain ones did have it, some did not. But this group of Chachamim had such a strong degree of achdus, unity among themselves, they refused to divide the group, to separate, that some should go and some should remain. This they turned down, because not all were fit to go. So they decided upon a solution. The solution was that they would all delay the trip. They would wait until every one of them had perfected himself and all possessed these four qualities. They would work on purifying themselves through tefillah, through fasting, through depriving themselves deprivation, but they would perfect themselves till they had these four necessary midas to get to this tree, so that they could go together be achdus. This they did. They struggled very hard in Avodas Hashem till they arrived at these midas. Then when they arrived at the midas, suddenly they said, now let's see which way to go. And here they realized they all agreed upon the correct path. No longer was there a difference of opinion to go to east, west, or other directions. Now they suddenly found they all felt the correct direction was the real right one. So, we agree, they all went on this path to the tree. This is what the Gemara says. We learned it in Sanhedrin. The Gemara says that when there is ahava, when there is true affection between people, between, let us say, a couple, a husband and wife, and they are poor, they don't have money to buy an expensive set of colonial furniture, or Louis XIV bedroom, or $5,000 oak paneled beds with double headboards lined with gold tassels. All they could do, they couldn't even get two beds. They tried to get one bed, they couldn't afford it either. So they finally found that they could get a knife, a sword. This sword, the side was so rusty, they had to stand the sword up on its side with a sharp edge upwards. And a very sharp edge it was. This very sharp edge, like a hairbreadth of width, the couple proceeded to use that as a bed, to sleep on that bed. The Gemara says when the ahava was great between this couple, they didn't mind it. They found that it was a very comfortable bed, because the ahava itself, the affection, the sincerity in them, made them disregard the discomfort. They were comfortable. There was enough space. Of course, this is an allegory. Whether we could say seriously sleeping on the sharp edge of a sword, take it literally or not, the Gemara uses that to demonstrate the point that space means nothing when it comes to, or comfort means nothing if two people live together in peace, in harmony, mutual respect. They don't mind the surroundings. They don't mind the difficulty in the type of home they have. Whereas, if there is no peace, if there is dissension, disharmony between this couple, they'll find that they'll buy a very special super king-size bed, 60 yards wide. And this 60-yard wide bed they'll find is too narrow for them. They just can't get along. They need more space than that because they're not homogeneous. They can't be together in peace. So they need more space than this 60 yards. Is that possible that a bed 60 yards wide is not enough to house two people for a night? Is that logical? The answer is very much so. We've seen a case, an actual case. We've seen a case of two brothers, Cain and Hevel, who were the only two people in the world to inherit the whole world. And it was a very large globe, very large world, a lot of forests, a lot of vegetation, a lot of animals. To divide a large world like this whole globe between two people, that's surely enough to last them for quite a while. And as the Midrash says, Mefedish, Cain said to Hevel, this world is not big enough for both of us. one has got to go. Not big enough. Millions of people live in peace. Small areas. That's when there is unity. When there is disharmony, disunity, and there's no spaces large enough to house two people with diversionary opinions. So, because the Chachamim now had arrived at a point of pure Achdus, it was no longer a question of direction. They all worked together. They found the right path because of this Achdus. As the Gemara says that Hashem himself wants Achdus among people so much, he's willing to overlook their shortcomings. Difference between the Deira Floga and the Anshe Sidon. Deira Floga, the Deira Floga who built the Tower of Babel, because they did not have unity among them, what happened? Hashem said, let them go. They've got to be destroyed, separated, break them up. So they were sent throughout the entire world. Different countries became inhabited, settled. Because they did not have peace among themselves, Hashem didn't want them. But where there was peace among themselves, they lived together. They themselves, they committed crimes, true, but among themselves they were at peace. So their crimes were overlooked. Very bad against Hashem. Their crimes were overlooked until they committed foul crimes against humans, and they had to pay for their crimes. But as far as going against Hashem, even with the Avodah Zorah, as long as there was unity, then the sentence was a light one. So we see that Achdus is a very vital point, and of course, Achdus among tzaddikim is most vital. If the Jews would have Achdus, unity, even if they weren't that perfect or that pure, then surely Mashiach would come. Of course, we cannot say it's the fault of the Orthodox minority that there's no Achdus, as the Reformed claim. They are in the majority. Why don't we have Achdus? Let the Orthodox give in to the Reform, Chas v'Shalom, and we'll all be one. Achdus will have Mashiach. That's the question the Gemara asks about why, if we consider majority rule, and why not? Why should the Jews, Chas v'Shalom, surrender to the Goyim? Surrender, give up their religion, live like Goyim, if majority rules. The answer is majority rules only where there is something concrete, where there is truth, but not where there is something that is false and meaningless, completely meaningless and worthless. Since the faith of Goyim is actually worthless, worth less than nothing, of course, and then surely you cannot expect truth to give in, to succumb, become subdued to falsehood. And the only majority is that of truth, and therefore, in fact, the Jews today are in the majority in the world. When it comes to truth, they are in the majority. Back to the story. This group set out. They went for a period of time until they could see the tree from far. They actually observed this tree. A marvel of this tree. A tree which could hold all the animals of the world, all the birds of the world, in peace. There'd be actual peace there. But they were amazed when they looked at this tree and saw that the tree is there, but it's not there. It's in a place where there is no place. The tree was in no place. There was no space at all. How do we describe spacelessness? Fact was that there was not 1 inch of space, and yet in that zero amount of space, there the tree stood spread out with all its branches and with the vast amount that it could take. Now, since the tree is not in a place, it's not in a actual space. How do you get to spacelessness? How do you go from space to a place where there is no space? All these wise men were now in a quandary. They could not solve this dilemma. Now this bettler, this apparent hunchback bettler, spoke up and said, I was there too. I said to them, I can bring you all, I can carry you all to this tree. On my shoulders, the posek says, by Yisachar, the tzadik emes, it says, Vayet shichma lisba. He bent his shoulders to carry the burden of the Torah. What is great about carrying that burden? Because, as we know, speaking about the degrees of spacelessness, we spoke about Eretz Yisrael, the 10 levels of Kedusha, how in Eretz Yisrael you could fit unlimited, infinite number of people, how in Yerushalmi all the Jews could assemble and find a place to sleep comfortably, how in the yard of the Beis HaMikdash, the entire Jewish population could assemble there and bow with space to spare. Now, still further, going into the Holy of Holies, the Holy Ark was in a room, this Holy of Holies, between the two angelic figures, between the two kiruvim. The kiruvim, side by side, filled up exactly the width of that room. Completely filled up the width of that room. Right between these two kiruvim, how much space was there between the two kiruvim? Zero. There wasn't a fraction of an inch of space because it was exactly the amount to fill up the room. In between those two kiruvim, which means zero space, that's where the Holy Ark stood. How do you fit a Holy Ark into a space of zero? That's because it was so holy that it was above the concept of space. It was that great and that holy, it was not ruled by the laws of space. This was the case of this tzadik emes. What is the fact of this Aron Kodesh? The Gemara says that it was carried in the desert by the Levim. Levim carried the Aron Kodesh as the Jews moved through the desert. Now they carried it on their shoulders. Did the Levim physically carry the Aron Kodesh? The Aron Kodesh is that holy and that great above nature. Could it be carried by physical beings? The Gemara says that it looked as though they would carry the Aron Kodesh. Actually, if you observe closely, you would see that the feet of the Levim did not touch the ground. So the Aron is Neisei es Neisov. The Aron really, literally carried its carriers. At no time was the Aron carried through the desert. The Aron was on their shoulders, but the Aron moved, carrying, holding up, elevating those who were supposed to be carrying it. This is what this bettler said. Since I am above the concept of space, the tzadik emes, I am like the Aron Kodesh, therefore I can take all of you, carry you into this place that is above the concept of space, where this tree, this special tree is. So this he proceeded to do. And of course, with this, he proved that he had unusual shoulders. He was not a hunchback. After all, his shoulders were more powerful than any in existence. The reason that they seemed hunched was because he kept them hunched away from the physical, material, mundane items in this world. He refused to associate with anything that was base, crass, and gashmias. But in truth, he was the tzadik emes who was the malam and hamokim and possessed the true essence of biyut machzik v'samruva. Now he said to this couple, now that I'm here on this fifth day, I give you this power as a gift, and you should be like I am. And great joy broke out. They were very happy. They rejoiced that day tremendously with this fifth bettler. Next day, the sixth day after the celebration, this wedding feast, they were also very happy, and they began to yearn for the sixth bettler without hands. without arms. And yet they cry, how can we get this Bethlehem here? Of course they yearned and cried, as usual, by crying and yearning for Kedusha, a person is zecher to it. Suddenly he appeared. And he said, I am here. You want me that badly, that strongly, that intensely? I am here for your sake. I've come to you at this wedding. And he said to them, again, you think, it appears to you that I have a physical defect, my hands and my arms. Fact is that there's nothing wrong with my arms at all. Truth is that I have a power, full power in my hands, but I do not use this power at all in this physical world. I need this for a different purpose, and I'm preserving the power of my hands specifically for that purpose. What that purpose is, we'll see. He said to us, I have the confirmation about this power of mine, that my hands are superior in power to any hands that exist. This will be confirmed by the fortress made of pure, crystal clear water. A fortress of water. How does a fortress of water stand up? And of course they were amazed, and he proceeded to tell them the story. This is the last story told by the Arizal. This is the most amazing of all the stories. This is the one about which there is more depth, a greater revelation of the heavenly secrets than any other part, any of the other stories. About this, Arizal said that this story is so deep, as much as we can derive from it, we must wait for Mashiach to come. Mashiach will then give us the secrets of this story. Plus, of course, the end of the story, which we lack. Now, this sixth Bettler said, he told this story. One time, we were sitting together, a number of people. In this case, of course, people refers to very great tzaddikim. Who these great tzaddikim are is difficult to say. But of course it means the great tzaddikim of the past, the greatest tzaddikim of all time, or above the physical. Those who are bali meifsim, those who could perform miracles easily, but even there you have different levels. This was a group of the greatest tzaddikim. Each one spoke about the power that he has in his hands. Special powers. One said that he has one kind of a power, the second said a different kind of a power. Each one had a different type of power. Now, the first one said he prided himself that he has such a strength and power in his hands that when he shoots an arrow, when he shoots the arrow, he has the power of drawing the arrow back to himself. Without moving, he can get the arrow back to where it came from. He has that type of power. Though he shot this arrow already, he could still retrieve this arrow. That's a tremendous power. We find that as a posek Hashem said to Eiv. When Hashem spoke to Eiv, Eiv was suffering. Eiv complained to Hashem. Hashem said to Eiv, do you know what it means to be able to shoot an arrow and retrieve it? So we see this as one of the items mentioned in the Torah. Hashem himself spoke about this power. Now, if a tzaddik says he has this power, we would think that that should just about finish the contest. But the Bettler, this sixth Bettler spoke up, who was there, and said, he asked this first tzaddik, you can retrieve the arrow, right? Tell me, which kind of an arrow is it that you can retrieve? Because, in fact, there are 10 different types of arrows. What's meant by an arrow? What is meant by 10 different kinds of arrows? An arrow is used in warfare. An arrow itself does not necessarily kill. What is done generally is to smear the arrow with a special type of poison. Now, there are 10 different kinds of poison. Now, one wants to shoot these arrows. He smears the arrow with a certain type of poison, any one of these 10. And when this is done, and of course, the different kind of harm comes from it. In most cases, of course, it is fatal. In some cases, it can bring insanity, or it can bring a certain type of physical defect. These 10 different types of poisons, one is worse than the other, one does more harm than the other. This is what's meant by 10 different kinds of arrows. Because actually, all arrows are the same. It's just that they differ because of the different types of poison that are smeared on them. Now, he asked, which kind of arrow is it that you can retrieve? First question. Second question he asked, you retrieve the arrow after you've shot it out of your bow, but before it hit the victim, or can you even retrieve it after it hit the victim? After it penetrated the victim, you retrieve it then too. Retrieve it meaning that to draw back with the poison from the victim. It shouldn't do any harm. This tzadik answered, I can retrieve the arrow even after it struck and reached its mark. I can still retrieve that. But you asked, what kind of arrow? One certain type of arrow. That's my ability. The bettler replied, if that's the case, if you can retrieve only one kind of arrow, then you are not fit, you are not able to cure the princess. Because you can only draw out one of these 10 arrows, it is impossible for you to serve as the one to cure the princess, whose fate we'll learn in a moment. Of course, first, Arizal says we have to understand what is the sense. We're speaking now not about an enemy, we're speaking now about a tzadik. Why would a tzadik shoot a poison arrow and then retrieve it? He retrieves the arrow, it's a great accomplishment. But why shoot the arrow in the first place? If you want to cure somebody, do you cure him by shooting a poison arrow into him? The answer is that we're speaking about one who has already been harmed by this type of arrow or arrows. In order to cure that person, the cure is by shooting a second arrow with this poison, retrieving it, and this poison will draw its own kind. By drawing out his own arrow, it will also draw out the poison that was embedded by the arrows of the enemy. This, of course, means the person was struck by the Gezeda, decrees of through the Satan, through the angel of death, through the Baldavar, and because of sins which merited it. What does the tzaddik emes do? In order to be mamtik this din, to subdue, to nullify this din, he's got to be mamtik the din b'shalashai. In the very origin, the root of this din, he's got to descend to that root, and right there in the root itself, to clear it out, to clean out the roots. And this he does, proceeds to by going to, he attacks this root with din itself. So it means he uses a poison arrow to reach the very root of that din, and with this, he draws his own arrow out, drawing with it all the rest of the poison of that din, which was injected by the Gzar din from heaven through the Satan. This is why this tzaddik said, even after I strike the victim with this poison, I can still withdraw it and remove the poison that comes from the Satan. This was the first tzaddik who spoke up. Second tzaddik said, I have a power in my hands that from whoever I take, I actually give. My taking is not really taking, it is giving. Which means, of course, this is the power of tzedakah. The Gemara says that what the poor person does for the rich man is much more than what the rich man does for the poor man. By taking from the rich man tzedakah, he's doing the rich man a favor. Because in turn the rich man is going to receive much more than he gave. will receive dividends for the tzedakah he gives that is so much. He'll get back more than he gave, so the giving is really receiving. This therefore means tzedakah. The Bettler asked him, what kind of tzedakah, since you're about tzedakah, what kind of tzedakah do you give? Because actually there are 10 kinds of tzedakah. And the tzadik answered, I give a certain tzedakah called meiser, which means, in essence, one of the 10. The Esser, I give one of these 10, I'm a master of one of these 10 degrees of tzedakah. The Bettler replied, if that's the case, you cannot cure the princess. You cannot even get to where she is, because she is behind 10 walls. And you can only get through to one. One wall alone is not enough. Since you cannot get to where she is, then you surely cannot cure her. So in this case, your power is futile. The next one, the third one, spoke up and said, I have a power of my hands. There are certain officials, high officers in this world. This means there are leaders politically over cities or lands. Every leader, in order to be able to rule, must have wisdom. Each person to rule requires a special kind of wisdom. He said, I have power of my hands, that I can endow a person with wisdom through my hands. It is like the union of smicha. The person gets a degree, a rabbinical degree, we call that smicha. The samach es yoda olav. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, place your hands upon Yeshua, give him smicha. Rest your hands upon him and thereby endow him with this gift of wisdom. So this tzadik said, I have the power in my hands to place my hands upon a person and thereby bless him, give him the degree of wisdom. The Bettler asked him, which kind of wisdom can you bestow upon this person? Because there are 10 degrees of wisdom. The Gemara says, when Hashem created the world, there were 10 measures of chachma given to the world. Of these 10 measures, which of these measures can you give to the person that you're giving the smicha to, this chachma to? The tzaddik answered, I can give this one certain type of chachma. The Bettler said to him again, if that's the case, you too cannot cure the princess, because you cannot recognize, you cannot detect, you cannot read a pulse. The pulse is the barometer of the physical quality of the body, the condition of the body. A doctor can tell the condition of a person by feeling his pulse. And in order to know the pulse, you have to have a knowledge of these 10 kinds of wisdom. Since you know only one type of pulse, there are 10 different pulses, then you cannot cure this princess. The Tikuney Zohar goes into this very much in depth. We'll discuss it a little later, more in detail, what is meant by reading a pulse. How does one read a pulse? How does one detect the feel of a pulse? It would seem to us that they're all about the same. All pulses sound the same. One may be stronger and one weaker. But how do you read this pulse? How do you tell the condition of the person, actually, not just physically, but spiritually? How do you read the neshama? By feeling the pulse. What is meant by knowing all 10 kinds of pulses? In any event, the Bettler said to this tzaddik, you're great, you know one of these 10, but in order to cure the princess, you must have all 10. Because we're speaking here, as we'll see, about a princess who needs all 10 cures. She was struck with all 10 arrows, and must have one super person, a tzaddik who has the ability of all 10 to be able to cure her. Since you know only one pulse, you cannot be the one to cure her. The fourth and last one spoke up and said, I have a power in my hands. My power is that when there is a storm wind, powerful gale or a hurricane, I can put my hands up and stop that storm in its tracks. I can also control this strong wind to a point I can abate it, weaken it, subdue it, where it should move at its proper speed. I can command it to go at a certain special speed. Butler asked him, which kind of wind can you control with your hands? There are 10 different kinds of winds, 10 different types of winds. Of course, there are 4 directions. But besides this, that's 4 directions of winds. North wind, south, as the Gemara describes. But basically, there are 10 different kinds of winds. You are the master of which one? One or ones? The tzadik replied, one kind, this certain kind of wind. The Betler said to him, if that's the case, then you too cannot cure the princess. Because when we speak of winds, on a much higher level, we speak of the wisdom of music, the wind instruments that produce musical notes. And the holiest of all sounds are these musical notes, as we see in the Sefer Torah, as we'll explain to later. The highest of all elements in existence is the musical sound. There are 10 kinds of sounds, 10 kinds of musical sounds, basically, and these are produced by the 10 types of blowing power of these winds. In order to know the 10 kinds of negina, just as, for example, the Tikuney is composed of the 10 chapters of Tehillim, 10 kinds of negina that come from these 10 kinds of winds. Therefore, in order to be able to use this, to achieve this, you must know every one of these 10. Without this, without the knowledge of these 10 kinds of negina, you do not have the cure for the princess. Since you know only one, then you can't be the one to cure it. These 4 tzaddikim turned to the Betler, this Betler without hands, and said to him, we told you what we can do. And you criticized us. Tell us, what's your power? What power do you have in your hands? And this Betler replied, I can do what you can do, which means each one of you has a power with one kind of poison arrows, or one kind of stucca, or one kind of wisdom, or one kind of wind. I can do that. But I also know the other 9/10 of each one of you. I'm perfect in all 10 parts of these 4 items. I can do completely what you failed to do. And he said, now, I'll reveal the story behind all this, why it is so necessary to know about this. What is the special story of the princess who needs a cure? He began to tell a story about a certain king who had a strong desire, a yearning for this princess who possessed the greatest beauty on earth in existence. And he strove with all types of schemes to capture this princess. He did everything, used every wile and scheme possible, until he finally succeeded in capturing this princess. Now, in essence, of course, this story deals with the Yetzer Hara, the Satan, who's dedicated to his work, capturing, taking captive the most beautiful item in existence. The princess is the neshama. Every Jewish neshama is called a princess. It comes from heaven, Father in heaven, the neshama is born from the Yichud Li'ela, the king and queen of heaven. And this princess is the desire of the Satan to take captive this princess for himself. That is the greatest victory in the part of the Satan. Chas v'shalom, overpower the spiritual beauty, the kedusha of a Jew's neshama, or more so, to try to take captive the Knesset Yisrael, the one general neshama of the entire Jewish people, as was the work of the Satan at one time, Pare. Finally, he tried to enslave all the Jews in his land, to remove them from their religion. Or the king of Yavon, the time of the Jews in the base of Mikdash, time of Hanukkah, to get them to leave, to desert their religion, to become captive to him who was symbolically then a Satan. This is the work of the Satan, and the time came, he said, when the princess was captured. However, there began an incident which changed the picture radically. This incident is what brought about the entire story of this battle. This will take up in the next shiur, and we'll attempt to interpret as much as possible all these items we spoke about. Every one of these is extremely rich. It deals with a very deep topic, and would pay for each person to honestly and truly concentrate very deeply to try. We continue to share in Sichei Saran, Sif Kuf Mem Tes, dealing with the Sipuri Maisiyos, 13th, last Maisa, the Zion Bettlers. We'll try to conclude this Maisa today, we hope. The Maisa briefly deals with two children who were lost in the forest, who were privileged to witness the attention of 7 bettlers, 7 beggars, which actually were tzadikim, the highest, the greatest tzadikim of all time. And as we learn later, they actually were all one individual tzadik. The tzadik emes who came in different forms. Later, when this couple, this boy and girl, these children, came to their wedding date, they remembered these Zion bettlers, the 7 bettlers, and they cried to them. Each one of the 7 days of a feast after the wedding, one of the bettlers appeared, which means that the tzaddik appeared in one form after the other. On the 6th day, which we are up to now, the 6th bettler appeared. The 6th bettler was the one without hands, or with a defect in the hands. And he explained to them, just as the others did, that there was nothing wrong with his hands. It's just that his hands were far superior to the normal or to the natural. He told the story of the great tzaddikim who spoke about the power they had in their hands, and the fact that 4 of them prided themselves with this power. One said that he could shoot an arrow and then remove the arrow after it's been shot, a poison arrow, remove it to cure the recipient of that arrow from this poisoned arrow. The 6th bettler said to this tzaddik that you know only 1/10 of what you're supposed to, because there are 10 different kinds of poison arrows. Since you cannot remove the other 9, therefore you cannot cure the princess, which we'll discuss in today's story. The second one boasted he had a power in his hands that whoever he receives from, he actually gives to, which means the power of tzedakah. Again, he had only one of the 10 different powers of tzedakah. He cannot cure the princess. Third said that he has the power of bestowing wisdom upon those whom he rests his hands on. Again, he asked him, since there are 10 different kinds of wisdom, which come from the 10 different pulses in the wrist, and this tzaddik knew only one of them, he too could not cure the princess. The 4th one said he has the power of stopping the wind, or to arrange the wind in a proper form to a degree, whatever degree he wants. And again, the reply of the bettler was that you know only one of the 10 different winds. The winds, of course, refer to the negina, the power of song, which comes from these wind instruments. Since you know only one of the 10 different kinds of negina, as, for example, the Sefer Tehillim is written, it's composed according to the 10 different kinds of musical notes. since this tzadik knows only one, he too cannot cure the princess. I asked the bettler, what can you do? He said, I can do whatever you cannot. In other words, all the 9 portions that are missing from that which you claimed you could do, plus the one that you could do, I know all of them. Therefore, I am the only one that can cure this princess. Now, we come to the story of this princess who is to be cured by this 6th bettler. He told the story as follows. One time there was a king, cruel king, who desired this princess. He desired her very much. He strove very hard to take her captive, until finally he succeeded. He captured her, took her, and subdued her. He kept her captive in his lair. One day, this evil king had a dream in which he dreamt that this princess rose up and killed him. A very frightening nightmare. He woke up. He took this dream seriously. He called all the interpreters to interpret this dream, and each one interpreted simply, without any hidden message. As simple as it was. The dream will come true in that the princess will kill him. The king could find no peace of mind. He could not find a solution to this problem. What should he now do to her? If he should kill her, he felt very badly about that. He wanted her so much, how can he feel right in killing her? Should he send her away, this would hurt him even more. Because after all he went through to get her, now someone else will be able to take her captive, will own her. But this bothered him even still more. And secondly, if he does send her away, and she does come to a different person, a different king or a different master, surely the dream will come true because she will want to take revenge. She'll surely come back to kill him. Should he keep her with him, not to kill her, not to send her away? He was afraid that at any moment she may fulfill that dream and kill him. So the king did not know what to do. And while thinking about this, as the moments passed by, because of this trepidation, this worry and fear, he began to decrease the amount of ahava, affection that he had for this princess. He lost his affection for her bit by bit because of this dream. And of course, in return, she too began to dislike him also, bit by bit, until she began to detest him. And so finally she fled. She escaped. The king sent his soldiers after her to search for her. They came back and reported that she was now at the fortress made of water. A fortress purely consisting of water. Of course, this the bettler told, there is a fortress made of water, and this fortress, there are 10 walls, 10 separate walls, one inside the other, one past the other. All these are walls of water, and the ground on which one goes into through these walls into the Tiller fortress also are made of water. Within these walls, within these boundaries, there are trees, fruit, ones of extraordinary beauty. All of them consist of water. The beauty of this fortress, the remarkable sight, is impossible to describe, because certainly it's something that's very novel, very unusual, since the entire thing consists of only water. To go into this fortress, to enter into it, these walls, is a physical impossibility, because a person would surely drown. The princess fled till she came to this fortress, And she began to circle this fortress looking for a way in. The soldiers reported to the king that she was walking around this fortress. The king went himself, took his army to recapture her. She saw the king coming after her. She decided that she would flee to within this fortress, because if it meant that she would drown, she felt she preferred drowning, rather than to have this king, this detestable creature, to recapture her. And so she felt too that perhaps by some miracle or whatever she might be saved by entering this fortress of water. When the king saw that she was fleeing into this fortress of water, there was no way that he could run after her, capture her, so he ordered his men to shoot her. If she dies, let her die. So the soldiers shot at her with arrows, and the arrows reached their mark. All 10 different types of arrows that were smeared with the 10 different types of poison penetrated her, found their mark, and she fled, wounded, so seriously wounded, into this fortress. She went through, past the gates of these 10 different walls, because in the walls of water, there are gates too, also made of water. She passed through this, entered into the last one, into the fortress of water itself, to the very interior, and there she fell unconscious. And this bettler, sixth bettler, said, and I am occupying myself working on her cure. I am presently curing her. We'll come back to this in a moment. Let's first see a little. First try to understand a little about the what is meant by the terms that are used here. First, when we speak about the king, this evil king who desired this princess of beauty. Who is the evil king? This naturally refers to the Satan. The Satan, the Yetzer Hara, who is the ruler. In Torah we find that the Satan is called Melech Zoken Exil, a fool, an old fool, but a king, one who rules over those who are his subordinates. When a Yetzer Hara overtakes a person, he overpowers a person, one of us, he actually rules that person. His command is carried out. The person falls victim to the temptations, to the wiles of this Yetzer Hara, and he obeys like a slave. So therefore he is called a king. The princess of beauty is the Jewish neshama, the soul of every Jew. This is to be taken either individually or collectively. It means each single Jew in his battle against this king, or it means the entire Jewish nation, the Knesset Yisrael, as one, the soul of the Jewish nation, which is always in combat, is always in combat against this king. Now the Satan's mission on earth is to try to capture this soul of beauty, Jewish soul. This is what his mission is. This is what he occupies himself with. So the Satan, in his attempt to pursue and to overtake and to capture and to subdue the Jewish soul, in most cases, is successful. He has this soul under his power. But then, the dream comes to him a fact. This means at a time close to Mashiach's coming, he realizes the future. The dream portends the future. Future as is brought, that there will come a time when he will be slaughtered. We say in the Haggadah, Hashem will slaughter the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death. Remember, this is one single individual. Satan, the Yetzer Hara, Malach HaMavis, it's all actually one single angel. And this one, ultimately, eventually, after Mashiach's coming, Hashem will slaughter this Yetzer Hara, this evil angel, this evil king. So, the Satan becomes desperate. What should he do? Should he first try to destroy Chas V'Shalom the Jewish soul, destroy it completely, and perhaps thereby his life will be saved, because if there's no Jewish soul left, or a Jewish nation in Chas V'Shalom, there'd be no benefit in killing him. So he contemplates this idea. As a result, he loses his taste for this Jewish soul. Till now, it's all he wanted was to capture the soul, take it captive, to rule it. But now, when he feels that this soul, rather than being a slave, has become his enemy, will ultimately destroy him, he begins to dislike it. And as a result, too, there is an actual awakening from within, a deep cry of the captive soul, an awakening that all this pleasures and joy and tivus, desires the person has, really are wasted. There is nothing tangibly good there. It's all an illusion. And eventually, this will all prove to be the person's undoing. The soul begins to awaken and loses its taste. The taiva begins to sour. So that's why Menachem says here that by her too, a liking for him turned to a hatred. That's the arousing within a person's heart to tshuva. But tshuva, he begins to dislike the taivas which he kept pursuing. So the soul flees. Where does a soul flee? Where should a Jew flee to when he is attacked and overpowered by the Satan? The Gemara says, Mashichehu lebeis hamedrash. Drag the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, into the Beis HaMedrash. Go into the shul, open a sefer, and start to learn. That is the fortress that will protect you against the Satan. The Satan is fire, this fortress is water, which will extinguish the fire of Taivas. A person is aroused to sin, there is a burning desire within him. The waters of Teda, the cool waters of Teda, extinguish this fire of Taiva. So, this fortress of water, a fortress, protective fortress, against all evil, is the one item, the one haven of refuge, of safety against this evil king. And yet we say that a person fleeing there can drown. It could be fatal, of course. The study of Teda is not of benefit to everyone. A person must first be equipped with a proper degree of emunah. There are many people who study Teda and they emerge apikursim, kaifrim, great scholars who learn Teda, or you have some of the not so great reform rabbis, and they are the worst kaifrim in existence, atheists. And then too you have those who study Kabbalah. Kabbalah itself, as the Arizal says, is the Teda of truth, knowledge of truth and depth. Yet a person who does not possess the proper degree of emunah can become the worst kafir too. There are those who study the Zayre Kodesh, Rahman al-Islam, for their tamei, contaminated minds and mouths, who then voice statements against the Zayre Kodesh, against Kabbalah. There are many Kabbalists, or so-called ones, who spout the most venomous statements against true faith. They are the ones who spread the poison of philosophy. so that we see that the study of Torah itself could prove a person's undoing. It is the fresh waters of Torah, where if a person cannot swim properly, he will surely drown. In order to swim, he must be equipped with the lifesaver, which is emunah, true faith. Now we say that the Torah itself, the fortress, is water. Everything in it, too, was made of water. Note that we stressed even the ground there was made of water, too. This means that, very simply, of course, if you understand it. Simple after you get the information. Rosenfeld tells us that the word Bereshis is one of the 10 statements with which the world was created. The word Bereshis is that word that was used to create water. The first item in all of creation was water. The first item before all of creation was the Torah. Therefore, the similarity. Now, since that was the first item, hence, when we say that there was a creation of Yesh Me'ayin, something was created out of nothing. This Yesh refers to water. Water was created from nothing. Just by the word of Hashem, the command of Hashem created water from nothing. Afterwards, everything else, following that, was Yesh Me'yesh. Everything else was a product of something that existed already. So what was the earth created from? From nothing? It was not from nothing. The earth came from water. Original creation was water, and from that water there was produced everything else subsequently. So that's why in this fortress, even the earth was made of water. Everything in this creation came from the original first item, which was water. The earth, and then in the later days the trees, the fruit, and so on, all came because of the first item of creation, which was water. The beauty of this fortress, of course, is impossible to relate. And, of course, the beauty, too, is the fact, the sense, the depth of wisdom, because in the Torah there are secrets that are impossible to fathom. Items, too, where a person could fall victim there. The secret of the Chol HaPonui. To explain, Arizal says that in creation itself, when Hashem created the world, in order to create something where there was only Hashem, there had to be a constriction. It had to be Kaviyachol. Hashem had to remove himself partially from a given area of space, in that space to create the world. Now, it means that if a world was to be created, it had to be a space, an area that was vacant of Kaviyachol, vacant of Hashem's Spirit. If it was vacant of Hashem's Spirit, how could anything exist there? How could a world exist if that part was vacant of Hashem's Spirit? And if it was not vacant of Hashem's Spirit, then how could there be room for the world to exist? This is the question of the Chol HaPonui. The Arizal says that this question is one that cannot be answered and that a person should not attempt to answer. It's an impossibility. Anybody who attempts to answer this question will fall into the worst type of philosophy and kfirah. So, this is what's meant by the danger of going into these 10 walls, the fortress of water, the danger of a person falling victim into something which cannot be answered, which is beyond his mental conception. Now, this is one item. We speak until now about the neshama being pursued by the Satan. This too affects the entire Jewish people. We speak about this king. The king refers also to the first dangers which the Jews themselves suffered. That is the beginning of the Jews as a people. Avraham Avinu came to Egypt with his wife Sarah. That's the princess. The king pursued her, took her captive. The result was the king lost out. However, he came back stronger later to take Avraham Avinu's children, the entire Jewish nation, captive. He took them captive until the time came when they decided to flee. Where did they flee to? They fled to the waters of the Yam Suf. They came to those waters. Going into the water would mean certain death. They would drown. And yet, they plunged in. When they plunged in, this king followed them. He ordered his men to shoot. In the Chumash we find that the Egyptian soldiers shot the arrows at the Jews. And of course, we know it says the Malach of Hashem acted as a buffer between the Egyptian soldiers and the Jews and received all these poisonous arrows. However, all, not exactly, some of this poison did penetrate through, reached some of the Jews, and therefore we find that they were poisoned. Some were poisoned because we see, Medrash the Gemara says that some of them were filled with a lack of faith. They said, we're going to drown, the same as the others. What's going to stop us from being wiped out? Which meant a complete lack of faith in the power of Hashem saving them. This is where they were hurt, and this resulted later in these 10 arrows poisoned by Paro, the Egyptians, resulted in a lack of faith by the Jews. We find that in the desert, as we read in Pirkei Avos, Chumash, it says, Asora nisyonos nisu avosenu. The Jews, Kaviyachol, tested Hashem 10 times in the desert. 10 times, the story tells in the Chumash how they angered Hashem through their lack of faith in Hashem. This was due to the 10 kinds of poison that were injected in them by the arrows of the evil king, Paro and his men. When we say, too, that the king commanded his men to shoot into this princess, remember the princess means royalty. Gemara says that the Satan does not bother with peasants, with low people. He doesn't bother with goyim. He doesn't bother even with Jews who are amaratzim, illiterates, ordinary low type. Satan leaves them all. He abandons all the ordinary people and goes primarily to attack the Talmidei Chachamim, the select chosen sages, tzadikim. Those are the ones in which he concentrates his main line of attack. Therefore, the term used that the king commanded to shoot the princess specifically. Again, princess, which means the royalty. The Gemara says, Talmidei Chachamim are man malchi rabbanan. They are kings. They are princes. They are royalty. So the sixth Bettler said that I am occupied the attempt to cure this princess. The attempt to cure. He does not say I have cured her. I have done my duty in curing her that simply, because it takes the cooperation of all the other tzaddikim. Their cooperation is, they must admit that he is their superior. There is one tzaddik emes over them. They must accept his rule with pure emunah in him. There must be emunah in the tzaddik emes, not just by every Jew, but by even the leading tzaddikim. Accept the fact that he is their leader, and without the tzaddik emes, they are nothing. All the prophets in the world received their prophecy only through the power of Moshe Rabbeinu. It was his nevuah which he meted out. He allotted to each one whatever they received. Came through Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, the words of this Bettler, I am curing her. I'm in the process of curing her. there is no part of the story where it says, I completed the cure. Just as in the Betler on the fourth day, and it says that the Betler on the fourth day was bringing together these two birds, the Kadosh Baruch Hu and the Shekhinah. He's working on that. It will not be complete till Mashiach comes. Ultimately, we'll see the final Geula. This Geula takes time for the constant effort of the tzadikimis. Now, the Betler continued that I am working on curing her because whoever does not have the 10 different kinds of tzedakah cannot enter into these 10 walls. He doesn't have the 10 kinds of tzedakah, and he will drown in that water. Tzedakah itself is a fortress that will help him enter into this fortress. The king and his army, the evil king, pursued the princess. All of them were drowned. Just as we find Pare and his army entered into the waters chasing after the Jews, and they were drowned. Now the Betler said, I can enter into these 10 walls of water, because these 10 walls of water are actually 10 waves of the sea that rose up and stand like a wall. What keeps this wall of water standing? The winds that blow, the tide, keeps the water up at this height. It elevates, it raises the waters up. These winds with the waves are there steadily. The winds keep them up in an upright position, and I am able to enter through because I have the power over these winds, the power of tzedakah, and also I'm able to draw from the princess the 10 different kinds of arrows. How? How do I cure her? Because I know the 10 different pulses through the 10 fingers. Every finger has a different pulse. I'm an expert in detecting the pulses. Therefore, through the knowledge of the pulses, I can then cure the princess with the 10 different kinds of nagina. Therefore, I cure her. 10 different kinds of musical notes, because what is the actual sickness? What is her illness? If we have to diagnose her illness properly, what kind of a sickness does she have? What is she afflicted with? To be exact, the answer is that this king, this Satan, is the Nachash, the serpent. Nachash begematria Satan. This Nachash, the first Nachash who brought death to the world, he is the Malach HaMavis afterwards. He is the Satan who causes the downfall and destruction, Chas v'shalom, of so many innocent souls. What is his weapon? What is the bite, the venom of this serpent? His bite is atzvus, sadness, depressed mind. A person who becomes depressed and sad and without simcha, without life, that is due to the bite of the Satan. He has fallen victim to the Satan. How do we cure? What is the necessary cure for this venom, this poison? That is simcha. True simcha, which removes completely this fog. It fogs the mind, the sadness, this depression. Person is there to that true simcha. This true simcha can be obtained only through the 10 kinds of nagina, the musical notes which bring to simcha. The 10 different kinds of nagina are all part of the Sefer Tehillim. Combined, they make up the Tikkun HaKlali. Now we know, Arizal mentions many times that Chilul HaBris, Chas v'shalom, person who commits the sin of Chilul HaBris should know that it is due to atzvus, due to sadness and depression of mind. If he thinks that he's happy at the time he's committing the sin, That's a false kind of happiness. That's due to a deep, inherent feeling of depression of mind, and this causes him to commit the worst, foulest acts. Therefore, in order to cure that, he's got to remove this depression of mind, this sadness, this atzvus, this modashchayda, this bitterness, by simcha, by the tikkun hakloli, which is the cure-all. Simcha is the cure-all eventually for all time. The geula will come through the simcha of the 10 chapters. Therefore, we find that the Gemara says, at the Red Sea, the Yam Suf, when the Jews were saved, what was the final word that saved them? Oz Yoshir Moshe Ovnei Yisrael. Then Moshe and the Jews sang. They sang the song of Simcha, Negina, song, music. But not that they sang, Oz Yoshir. Oz, then, in the future, Yoshir will come the Geula, the ultimate Geula, Yoshir they will sing. What kind of a song? Alei Osir V'alei Novel. A song on a kind of music instrument which is Osir, made up of 10 parts. An instrument that's made up of 10 parts, which means the Shir Shel Osir Lavai, the song of the future, which is composed of Hashem's name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, letters Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the Achirayim, Yud, that's Poshut 1, Yud-Kei, that's 2 more is 3, Yud-Kei Vav, 3 more is 6, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, 4 more is 10. That's the total name of Hashem B'Acharayim, made up of these 10 components. That's the 10 kinds of Negina of the future. Yosef Lovai, Geneden too. The future will have this song completed, and therefore that will bring about the complete extermination of the Satan in Malach HaMovis. This is the work of the Tzadik Emes, who through these 10 kinds of Negina removes the poisonous arrows from the Shekhinah, from the Knesset Yisrael, from the Jewish people, and from each Jewish neshama individually. Rosenfeld says now, of course the Bettler completed his statement by saying, so as a result you see the wonderful, marvelous power I have in my hands. I now give you this power as a gift. Then the greatest possible simcha broke out. They were so filled with happiness at this wedding because it was now complete. Complete to a point, of course. This is the end of the story. We do not have the 7th Bettler here, the one without feet. We do not have also the connection with the beginning of the story of the prince, not princess, but prince, also had, in a sense, lost his faith. The king had told him, you're taking over the kingdom, but you must be b'simcha. Even if you fall, you're not b'simcha, I will be happy anyhow, happy at your downfall. So we note there is a proximity, a closeness between these two. The prince who required simcha to be cured, the princess who required simcha also to be cured. Who, the B'il Kutim says, who would cure the prince? To tie in that story, where we could just detect a slight ray of light there. The first part of the story with this prince who dropped after he took over the kingdom, the one that will cure him is the 7th Bettler. Bettler without legs, which means his legs are perfect. The Hamuna Nela Ragla, the foundation, the Yesod, the legs, is Amuna. Netzach and Haid, which uphold the Malchus, the Amuna. That Amuna, that 7th Bettler cures the prince. The 6th Bettler cures the princess. This brings about the Yichud, the Eila Lamala, and the ultimate Gula. Arizal says, let's note, though, that of course is for the future. Mashiach will come, we'll have the Gula Shlema, and of course, too, Mashiach will speak, teach, reveal the secrets of this, the greatest story of all time. One note to go into this story for a moment, a little deeper, to notice that there is something very special about the story. It contains every single item. If we look into it, every item in Teda Shvichsav, the written Teda, Teda Shval Peh, every part of the oral Teda, every facet of Kabbalah, it's all included in this story. Arizal points out that if we notice, the story consists of the 4 tzaddikim who spoke about the 4 different kinds of powers. All these 4 are what struck the princess, and all 4 were necessary on the part of the bettler to cure the princess. We had first the arrows, the poisonous arrows. That's the lowest form. This refers to the lowest of the 4 worlds, the Elam HaAsiyah. This lowest of 4 worlds, Asiyah, that's the material world. This refers also to the lowest of the 4 names of Hashem, of Sog Mo Bon. Asiyah is the Shem Bon. This refers also to the 4 different types of creation. 4 types of creation are Daimim, the inorganic, Sameach, vegetation, Chai, animal life, Medaber, human life. So this Asiyah Bon is Daimim, the inorganic life, which refers to the 4 elements also, Afar, of Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afar, fire, air, water, and earth. That's Afar is the lowest of the worlds. The 4 parts of the Teda are the Aisies, the letters, the Tagim, the crowns, the Kudas, the vowels, and the Tamim, musical notes. And now we get this, the reconciling them, putting them in their proper order, proper perspective. We take first, when we spoke about the arrows of poison, refers to the bottom of all these 4. Bottom is this Elam HaAsiyah, this material world, the Shem Bon, corresponding to Daimim, inorganic life, corresponding to the Afar, the earth of the 4 elements, corresponding to the lowest of letters of the Teda. And every one of these is made up of 10 kinds of arrows, because every one of these items has 10 sfilas. So this, speaking about these arrows, means in creation, the Shvilas HaKelim, or the actual creation, there was a destruction. The worlds themselves were destroyed to a degree, lowered, and they require a tikkun, perfection. The next step was the water, the walls of water. Water referred to, as the Bettler said, tzedakah, 10 different kinds of tzedakah. This is the next level, the world, Elam HaYetzirah, the angelic world, referring to the Shem Mo, the second name of Hashem, referring to the next level of creation, Sameach, vegetation, corresponding to the second of the elements, which is water, corresponding to the crowns of the Sefer Teda, and this refers to tzedakah, which is the beginning of the tikkun, perfecting the world. Third item was the 10 different kinds of pulses. These pulses referred to, as he said, the 10 degrees of chachma, of wisdom, and this is the 3rd world going up, the Elam HaBriyah, the Shem Sog, of the 4 types of creation. This refers to Chai, animal life, and of the 4 elements, this is fire, because it's Nukva, this fire, this Dinim, the 4 parts of the Teda is the Kudas, and this is what gives the power to the tzadik to cure, because the Nekudas, as we said, these are the Nekudas. Tikuney Zohar says that the vowels in the Teda, they correspond to the pulse. How does the tzaddik recognize the pulse to diagnose an illness of the neshama? He listens to the pulse, detects the nekudas, the vowels each pulse corresponds to. This way he knows exactly what sin a person committed and how to cure it, what to do tshuva for. The top level was the Negina. Negina are the 10 different wind instruments, And this refers to the highest of the worlds, Elam HaTzilus, the highest name of Hashem, Shem Ayin Beis, the highest creation, Medaber, human, the four elements, the wind, this is the 10 winds, and the four parts of the Torah, this is the Talmud. This refers to the end of the Tikkun, complete Tikkun. Having had the first three, the tzadik emes can then use the wisdom of the winds, which means the Negina, 10 kinds of Negina, which is the Tikkun HaKloli, which comes from, as we see now, the Elam HaTzilus. I got the Tikkun HaKloli from the Elam HaTzilus, the highest of the worlds from the Shemayim Beis. To ascend that high, it takes only elite tzadik emes to be able to achieve that. In all generations, till that was achieved, till it was discovered finally by the Arizal, to reveal these 10 Talmud, 10 kinds of Negina, which is the Tikkun HaKloli, and which will definitely bring about the final Geula, because this will cure, this is curing the princess, the Knesset Yisrael, the Shekhinah, the Shekhinah Begelusa, to bring the Shekhinah back out of Golus into its final redemption, back to Eretz Yisrael. We should be zecher to attempt to understand, to learn, to study the words of Rabbi Arizal with that basic requirement of Emunah. Emunah in every single word of the Torah, and every facet of the Torah. Emunah in the tzadik emes, a true iskashus to the tzadik emes. Emunah in Hashem. That zechus, tavoi tashuri meresh Emunah. That zechus we will be zecher to see with our eyes the completion of the task of the tzadik emes, when ultimately there will be the final cure. The Shekhinah will return triumphantly with the Jews, with its children, to Eretz Yisrael, there to rebuild its home, the home of the Shekhinah, the Beis HaMikdash, becoming Mashiach, the kingdom of Heda. Amen.